Hey everyone, welcome to the BA 1080 2080 Career Success Strategies LPE Alumni Panel Discussion. My name is Brian, and I'm one of the career coaches for marketing students in the Lindner Career Services Center. And the point of this discussion today is really to give you some firsthand insight and advice from students who are on LPE and from alumni, all about the job search and strategies to be successful. So let's go ahead and take a minute and meet the panelists.
All right. Hi, I'm Liz Schultz. I currently work as a senior account executive at Icon Marketing Communications, which is an advertising firm in Northern Kentucky. Do you want me to go into my LPE experience?
Yeah, I was going to say, so let's I should have said that. Let's talk about what you're doing now and then any previous LPE co-op internship experiences that you've had.
Yep. So I had a few while at UC. My first summer after freshman year, I did 2 part-time internships, one at a political consulting firm as a judicial fundraising intern, and one at a video production company as just, video production intern. And then I worked part-time at an arts education nonprofit called Drama Kinetics. And then I did a full-time semester at CR Architecture and Design downtown. And then I capped it off with 1 full-time semester, 1 part-time semester at Icon Marketing Communications, which is where I work now.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much for being here, Liz. Let's go to Sean.
All right. So my name is Sean Smith. I am actually a 3rd-year accounting and information system major at UC. My previous LPE experience has been, I did 1 rotation at WorldPay, which just got bought by FIS in their SOX compliance department. And then I've been at Cincinnati Children's for the past year and 3 months as just their general accounting intern. I went from full-time in the spring of 2019 to part-time in the summer, part-time in the fall, and I remain there part-time now.
Nice. Good deal. And let's do Abdu next.
Yeah, so my name is Abdul. I'm a senior at the University of Cincinnati, double majoring in economics and finance. So my first job was actually as a lifeguard at the Clipper Family YMCA. So that was like, though it wasn't a formal LP, it was very formative and very helpful. So after that, I had a job at Merrill Lynch in their wealth management side. So I got to see a pretty good exposure of how different teams attack client management and growing their businesses. After that, I worked at the Fund Evaluation Group as a research intern in their private equity and global equity.
Oh.
Oh no.
Cut out. All right, let's go ahead and we'll move on to Surya.
Hey everybody, my name is Surya Langvan. Actually, I have to pull up my resume to see what all I've done because it's been such a long time.
I was talking to you on LinkedIn today, so I've got that right here if you need to.
Yeah. So I actually transferred to UC. So if any students have any questions about transfers and how that works and how to kind of adjust and stuff, I'm happy to answer those as well. So when I currently work at American Airlines. So today is actually my 1-year mark at American Airlines. So I got my little pin that says, happy 1-year anniversary and whatnot. So I work as a material planning analyst, and I did industrial management at UC. And my previous LPEs, I think I started with Chick-fil-A not too long ago, or that was in 2019. And then I did a rotation at the Hillman Group. I was a continuous improvement consultant there for about 6 months. It's falling down stairs. What it sounds like. And then I did a rotation at Southwest Airlines for about 4 months. And then I went part-time when I came back to UC, and I did a healthcare internship with MediSync for about just under a year. So I worked with them for about 9 to 8 months. And then after that, when I graduated, I went to Chicago. I was a project engineer for a company called 7 Multisite Solutions. It was a construction firm, and I was basically a project engineer doing everything from supply chain to procurement to FP&A analysis. And then now I'm at American. So yeah, happy to be here and excited to meet other alums and see what else is in store for us.
Phenomenal. So tons of experience, it sounds like. That's phenomenal. And then last but not least, Brennan.
Hi guys, my name is Brennan Hirth. I'm a fourth year here at the Lindner College of Business. I'm studying both information systems and business analytics and graduating this semester, which is super exciting. I had two kind of extended internships in the past, or Lindner professional experiences. So instead of hopping around to a bunch of different places, I kind of focused on two that I really liked. So the first one was for all of 2018. I was at Western and Southern Financial Group as an information security intern there, working with the security team, doing some security practices. And then just like Sean, I was at WorldPay from FIS, but instead of on the finance side, I was on the information systems side. So I was there in the summer and fall of 2019, and I worked as a Scrum Master intern, doing some project management with some of the teams there.
Thanks. So collectively, lots and lots and lots of experience among the five of you. So thank you all again so much for being here and kind of talking through some questions that I have for you in regards to your LPE and full-time job searches. All right, so first question. So lots of the students in BA 1080 and 2080 are looking for their first experience, their first LPE. So what advice do you have for those students who are trying to secure their first professional experience?
I can speak on that first. So my first co-ops after my freshman year, so my major was marketing. I work in advertising. They were not super related to what I was doing, but I was having trouble finding a first co-op, and through some connections was able to secure two part-time co-ops. So I just think the idea of getting any kind of experience that you can is going to boost your resume for the next time you apply for something. So, I mean, I worked for a political consulting firm, and then I worked for a video production agency that was literally one person and me. So they weren't like the most relevant and interesting experiences, but it got something on my resume that I could really talk about in interviews. But then I forgot to mention before, I run the intern program at my company. So I just interviewed actually 3 freshmen out of like 9 people for some positions for the summer. And the reason we asked those freshmen in were the strength of their resumes despite being freshmen, but also the in-person interactions we had with them at career fairs. So just having a really good resume, a really strong cover letter that isn't just a cut and paste that you actually like put effort into, and then making a connection at a career fair.
Excellent advice. What else comes to mind?
So I can speak a little bit on this. So I mentioned before that I was a transfer student. So when I first came to UC, I didn't know anybody. I didn't meet anybody, or I had no family or any connections out here. But I will say that networking will take you a long, long way. And I think the only way I got my internship at Chick-fil-A was by networking. So I think it was BA, I forget what the class it was, but it was like Introduction to Business, and one of our professors, she brought in the owner of Chick-fil-A from Kenwood Mall, and he was just telling us about his life and like how he got to where he is. And out of curiosity, I said, hey, you want to grab lunch sometime? I'd love to know more. If you have any advice, let's just talk. So that lunch then turned into like a coffee, and then at that coffee, it was like, hey, if you want to be my supply chain guy, let's do it. Like, I'll give you an internship. You can do all the food ordering. You can do the forecasting. You can do the inventory counts, and everything that he said really resonated with me. And it was an internship that came out of thin air. And it was just because I networked and because I talked to the owner at the time, Brent. And he was like, yeah, I'm willing to give you a shot. I need an extra person. So why don't you come and implement all the things that you want to do? So I would say networking goes a really, really long way. When I was at my other university, Embry-Riddle, I went to a career fair and networked with some people in Southwest. And I'd kept in touch with them. And about a year after joining UC, one of the recruiters called me up and they said, "Hey, I noticed you weren't at the career fair. What's going on? Do you want to talk about opportunities?" So even though you are a freshman, I would say I would highly encourage you to go and talk to companies. Make connections with people that you don't even intend on making connections with, because you don't know where that's going to lead. So when the recruiter called me back, it was like a happy surprise. I was like, "Oh, I'm not even from your schools that you recruit from," but he was like, "I want to give you an internship, so why don't you come in and interview?" So that actually turned into another internship offer. So I would highly recommend to go to career fairs. And one thing that I did was, when I went to career fairs, I would first go and talk to companies that I don't want to go with, just to kind of build up my confidence, and to build up my pitch. And then once you feel like, okay, 5 companies in, you're like, okay, I think I know what I'm talking about. Let me go talk to some of the companies I really want to be at. So that's something I did, and I think was really helpful. And I would say, networking will take you a long way. LinkedIn is a great tool, especially in a time like this. So get on there and start meeting people and start talking.
Yes, that's like probably the biggest thing that I try to get students to understand is like it's all about who you talk to. And you can't be afraid to just go out and try to make a connection, because you just never know where that's going to lead, obviously, for you. But great.
Yeah, and can I add one more thing based off what Liz said earlier? Yeah, I think that the first LPE, in my opinion, is the hardest to get, because you kind of have to prove yourself. And if you don't have any other previous experience in an LPE, it can be hard to do that. But just because you don't have another LPE doesn't mean you don't have experience. So I would definitely leverage any experience that you have in leadership or in student organizations and put that on your resume. Because sometimes the things that you've done in those organizations or as a leader in those ways can mean a lot more than a previous internship can. So I know I've had organizations and leadership on my resume since the very first time I made my resume in freshman year, and that has been on there, and I've been able to talk about that all the time. And sometimes that's the most interesting thing to talk about.
I was going to say, Liz, I'm sure you can vouch for that like leadership in any form is such an important piece for you as a recruiter to see that on somebody's resume, right?
Especially somebody who is a freshman who may not have experience. Looking at the resume and saying, wow, they're really involved. They clearly are dedicating themselves, even though they haven't been able to secure that first one yet. They clearly have initiative and are a really hard worker. And that's like a big quality that we look for.
Sure. Absolutely. What about Sean, Abdu, any thoughts on this one about, what you have for students looking to land their first LPE?
Yeah, I would say
I can. Oh,
you can go ahead, Sean.
Go ahead, Sean.
I was just going to say, from an accounting standpoint, if you're trying to go public, you have to keep in mind that the recruiters, they see thousands of people. I mean, they are constantly going from school to school, talking to as many people as you can. So I'd say the biggest thing you can do just from an accounting perspective is having multiple face-to-face conversations with the recruiters. The more leadership programs you apply to, the more times you go to the career fair or meet the firms or whatever it may be. If they have a desk down at the table in the front of Lindner, just making sure you have that face-to-face contact more than just 1 or 2 times. They're going to remember your face, and that'll help them remember your resume. And the earlier you start, you may not get it your first year. You may not get an internship with a Big 4 firm your first year, but the more times they see your name and they see your face, the more likely they're going to be to come back to you and say, hey, I know we had talked and you were new to school and everything when we first started talking, but now we would like you to come back. I spent a lot of time talking to BKD and the recruiter there, and he said, I picked your name out of a stack of resumes purely because I had seen you and talked to you more than just one time at Meet the Firms and got your resume. You reached out to me to have coffee. He said the face-to-face interaction goes a long way because he says it's just in our job to meet people after people after people. So the more face-to-face interactions you can get, the better off you're going to be down the line. As for landing your first LPE, it's the same thing. As much networking as you can do. I got my first LPE from a friend who was already at a job and at WorldPay, and he said, I want to take classes. Is there any way we can make this a part-time thing? They said, yeah, but we're going to need you to find somebody to fill in for this extra work. So the more connections you make, it just so happened that he was like, well, why don't you come work with me? We'll work the same hours and split the work, and that way you can get your first LPE. And that was how I landed my first one. So it's really just as much networking as you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Abdu.
Yeah, I would also add like a piece of it, at least for me, like when I got my first LPE, I remember my first LPE was at Merrill Lynch. So like I knew I wanted to go into financial advising. So I just started calling financial advisors. I started reaching out, and a lot of times I got the voicemail or like we'll call you back, but people never call me back. So I think just having that sense of a hustle and like going out and looking for the opportunities you want and trying to add a resume, trying to add a personality or a face to the resume can be very helpful. So that's the thing I would say is like, if you want to work for, P&G, maybe reach out to people on LinkedIn who are working at P&G and show them that you actually want and care about the position. So I would say a sense of hustle is very helpful.
Absolutely. That's phenomenal. You guys have all done really well with the whole networking piece. I'm so impressed. But yeah, I think that just goes to show you that anything that you can do to not just be a piece of paper, right? Because they get how many recruiters get how many resumes. All of you just expressed like things that you could do to, become, like you said, a personality rather than just a piece of paper. Great. So let's kind of, one of the questions, the next question was going to be what role has networking played in your various job searches? But I feel like we definitely already just covered that and the importance of getting out and meeting people. What advice do you have? So let's get into like your resume. What advice do you have for developing a standout resume? So we talked a little about like highlighting leadership. So obviously that's a huge thing. What other things have you all found helpful as far as developing a really strong resume?
I would say impact, right? Like if you're talking about something you did, what did that do? Why did it matter? And what like came from it, right? So like if you're going to talk about you were a manager somewhere or you were even the president of an organization, maybe throw in some numbers about, okay, when I started, we had 50 members. By the time I was done, we had 75, right? Something that can show that what you did actually mattered, and it gives some kind of context as to what you were doing and why you were doing it. That's what I would say is the biggest thing.
Phenomenal. Other thoughts?
I would just say one of the best things you can do to help your resume. I don't know if there's one standout item you can put because each job is different, but talking to somebody maybe at that company or in that field about your resume saying, hey, could you just look over it real quick? I know when I went to apply to public accounting firms, I asked people who were in the public accounting field to look over my resume and say, hey, would this stick out to a public accounting recruiter or is this just too different? And I just say the biggest thing you can do is go to people for advice, get as many people to look at your resume as you can. Not only so they're looking at it, but also you're receiving that feedback like, hey, you might want to highlight this experience a little bit more for this job you're applying to. Or, hey, I think it looks great. I just say use your resources and make sure people are looking at it and you're receiving their feedback and taking it to heart.
Yes, good. And you'll probably get contradicting information about like what's right, what's wrong, but just, collecting all of that and kind of coming to your own conclusion about what's best. Great. Good. Other thoughts?
I would
say that building out your resume is really like a beautification process. Whenever somebody gets your resume, I think the stats that we were given was that it's like 6 seconds that a recruiter spends on a resume when they first get it. Yeah. So I think your resume needs to be like eye-catchy enough for the recruiter to spend another 30 more seconds on it so that they can start combing through the details. And in those 30 seconds, like what I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name, but like what the first panelist said, you want to use data-driven numbers and facts that prove what you've done. to show for it. So, and I would say definitely have as many people look at it. There's not a number out there, but I must have given it to at least 100 people to look at, because every single person finds either a typo or some sort of formatting, or just when you think it's perfect, it's not. So go get it checked and get a lot of eyes on it. Because you'll get a lot of ideas and a lot of different ways to think about how you're presenting something. So yeah, that'd be my advice.
Good. Brennan, what were your thoughts that you were gonna say?
Yeah, definitely. I was gonna add in the fact that the resume that you give the interviewer or the person that you talk to is the resume that you're going to be interviewed on. They're gonna have that resume for you during the interview, most likely. So it's important that you can talk about each and every item that's on that resume. So for me, I put things that really mattered to me a lot and that I could tell stories off of that really showed who I was on my resume. And anytime they brought up one of those, I would have stories to tell that emphasized maybe leadership or a time when there was conflict. And as I was able to bounce around some of those and tie in what I was saying to what was on the paper. And I feel like that really gave a good impression of who I was and tied things together as a whole.
Great. Yeah. I think always thinking through, if anything's going to be on your resume, make sure that you have something substantive to talk about, right? Good. Liz, okay, you're a recruiter, you work with
Yeah.
co-ops. We'll kind of round us out here with your thoughts.
Yeah, so I agree with everything that everyone has said. I think it's really important, even if it's not, even if you don't have a data-driven material, any kind of numbers to go with something, making your experience worthwhile on your resume. It's not just that you were, I don't know, you worked at Smoothie King or something. It's, did you manage people? How many people, like going into more of the things that you learn, the skills that you're taking away from that, because it might be that even though you want to work at an ad agency, there's a transferable skill there. And so I always scan things, and I do scan things. I always scan things for kind of like buzzwords. So, or like, things that I'm like, oh, project management. Yes, we do a lot of project management, need that. Or like a lot of communication skills, really, really need that. So being able to say your experiences really well is super important. I come from a very creative world. So if you're looking for an LPE that's in more of a creative, unique kind of place of, not just, and not bashing accounting firms, but, not just an accounting firm, something a little more funky, I guess, I would definitely look into doing something unique with your resume. I was an e-media minor. I fully designed my resume. I have it on InDesign, and I have to go in and update it on InDesign every time I use it. Resumes that have a unique design are really going to stand out. I know not everybody has design skills, but there are templates out there that you can look into, or just, putting like a bar behind your name and making it a different font, just doing something that makes it stand out. It shows to us that like you have a little more of a unique creative mind, and you're not just kind of that cookie cutter resume that we always see. I'm trying to think what else. Take high school off. Even if you are a freshman, I think still take high school off. I mean, yes, yeah, just do that. I don't like it. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's all I have.
I've even
there's
seen,
one thing I
I've
wanted
even seen,
to-
that's an interesting point. I've even seen people say like, go back 4 years in terms of like education or where you are in life, like go back 4 years just to show what all you have, and then cut it if it's, but that's an interesting take to hear that high school, that you don't like to see high schools on there. Another thing that you mentioned about the buzzwords, I will say, there are a lot of companies that are getting thousands and thousands and thousands of resumes. So it might be really a good idea to look at the job description and see what they're looking for. Because of the job description and the responsibilities, it'll say we need somebody that's good with analytics, we need somebody that's good with Photoshop, whatever it might be, and try and insert those words into your resume so that when you do upload it, it bypasses the first screening that the computer takes out. HR won't even get your resume until it passes through the algorithms that the company's set. So another good idea might be to scan the job description and the roles and responsibilities and see what's on there, and then grab a few of those words and put them somewhere in your resume, that says developed or created or whatever the job description might be. Try and fit those words in there so that you can bypass the system and get to the recruiter. Don't let the computer beat you. So I'll say that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I also wanted to add in one more thing about resumes. So like one of the things that I found useful is like especially once you get to having a couple more job experiences, I guess this might be forward looking, but sitting down and really understanding when you leave a job, why did you leave it? What are you looking for? And then what does that connect to what you're trying to do, right? So like when I left, the YMCA, I talked about what I did there, why I didn't like it, but why it prepared me for my next role, right? So like beyond what's on your resume, having some kind of story or some kind of progression attached to your resume, I think.
Good. Oh, we can cut out again. But okay, yeah. So I think all of this is such good advice. Like almost point by point, exactly the kind of stuff that we talk about in our career class. So now kind of moving into LinkedIn. So I know that, there's quite a few similarities between what you put on your LinkedIn and your resume. So talk to me about how all of you have used your LinkedIn and are ways that you've leveraged LinkedIn for your job searches. Anybody?
I can go. So LinkedIn had this really cool feature. LinkedIn had this really cool feature called LinkedIn.com/alumni. I don't know if that's still a thing.
Yes, it is.
So I actually really loved using that tool because I was targeting the companies that I wanted to get into, and I was using the alumni feature to go and see who's worked there and who do I know that knows that person. So I guess at this time it's not about what you know, it's more about who you know and who they know. So through LinkedIn, if I can narrow my search to either like for example, when I was working at when I was trying to get into American, I used my fraternity, my business fraternity, to find a similarity with the person that was working at American. And then with that, I was like, hey, I'm a fellow Delta Sigma Pi brother. I'm really interested in working at American Airlines. Could you help me get, you give me some more information? Could we get together and chat? Now, hadn't I known that he works, there's a lot of background noise. Hadn't I known that he works, if I didn't know that he didn't work, that I wouldn't have reached out, and that wouldn't have turned into a job offer. Now, mind you might have to send out 100 just to get 10 responses, but even then you got to persevere through that and you got to keep going to get those responses. So I think use LinkedIn alumni a lot. Filter it down by just your school. And lucky for me, I had 3 schools to choose from. So I had like a big pool of schools to choose from, but UC has plenty of alumni that are spread out all across the world. So definitely use that and, stay active and network with people and, comment on things that they're doing, or just engage with them just as you would in Instagram. And LinkedIn is nothing but a professional Instagram. So like their comments, if they post some sort of article, go in there and read it and then, give your insights on it. So I'd say interact and engage with the people on LinkedIn, and definitely use the alumni option or the tool.
For sure. I was going to say, I feel like that's the best kept secret on LinkedIn is the alumni tool, because it allows you to so easily connect with people that already have common ground with you.
Yes.
What other thoughts do you guys have?
I have never actually used, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I've never actually used LinkedIn to actually getting a job. Any job I've found has all been through either personal networking or what used to be Hire UC and is now Handshake. So I feel like I don't have a lot of personal experience on my own connecting with people on LinkedIn and doing that, but from a recruiter's perspective, I have a lot of people who connect with me on LinkedIn and send me messages like, hey, remember me from the career fair? You complimented my hair. And that's true. Do that, because that does actually help. Like, hey, we talked about this. And I'm like, oh, yes. Okay. It was that person. Because after a while, I'm not gonna lie, all the faces blend together. But being able to connect with a recruiter that way, for me, that kind of takes a person one step further in my process. I'm like, okay, they actually care. they are more than just, oh, I'm just going to hand my resume and see what happens. They're like, I want to work here. I want to reach out to them. I'm going to do everything that I can. I've had people email me and reach out to me on LinkedIn. So I think it's a good spot for you to reach out to a recruiter once you have connected with them at a career fair, or when you see a job posting or something, always connect there, because it just puts you just one step forward. Oh, you're muted, Brian.
I'm muted. I was going to say, it kind of goes back to like what you said earlier, Sean, about just getting your face in front of these people time and time again so they remember who you are. Really good. What were you going to say, Sean?
I was just going to say, I mainly use LinkedIn not only to keep up on what the companies are doing, because a lot of companies, if you follow them on LinkedIn, there's constant updates about, hey, we're doing this, or like Cincinnati Children's, for example, always loves to post about their diversity and what they're doing for their employees and stuff. And it's always good talking points to see, like, hey, the company does this. When you go into the interview, you can ask them, like, hey, what's going on with this, or whatever. But another good thing is, if you're friends with recruiters or anything else on LinkedIn, they'll post like, hey, we're going to be at UC at the front desk at this time. It's given me a couple chances just to get down there and say hi and everything in between classes, or be the first one down there when somebody from Deloitte gets there. So that's just really what I've used LinkedIn for. It's also good to see what your friends are up to. I love to see my friends post and brag about, I got this internship or I got this co-op. It's great to see that. And even when you go to apply to those companies, you can talk to your friends and say, hey, I saw you worked here. Could you give me any tips for how I would go to interview or stuff like that?
Yeah.
I will add.
Go ahead.
I will add on to that. She'll be our intern for the summer, but I had an experience with a student who came up to me at a career fair, and like the first thing she said to me was like, oh, I see that you guys moved offices recently. I was like, oh, okay. Like, who are you? And she was like, oh, I like followed you on social media for a long time. And I'm like, oh, wow. That like clearly showed me that she had identified us before, knew she wanted to work at somewhere like us, and had followed us, and then could bring that up in conversation. So if you want to work at a certain type of place, identify some of those places in the area, follow them on LinkedIn, follow them on Instagram, on Facebook, and then use that as a talking point when you talk to someone, because it's going to show them that you actually genuinely want to work there, versus even just in an interview be like, well, during my research for your company, like showing that you have been researching for a while because you've wanted to work there for a while is very, very cool. I like that.
Good. So that kind of takes us into the next phase of the whole job search process, the interview. So, I mean, you guys mentioned that, following people on LinkedIn and kind of following them on following companies on social media is a great way to know what's going on, and then being able to talk about that in an interview. So like, what other advice do you have for being a standout interviewee?
I would say
I can go ahead and start on this one.
Yeah.
So I think Sean said it best when he said continually be there. Be someone who's almost like not in the recruiter's hair, but is like constantly there and showing continued interest, because that's how I was able to land the positions that I landed. I was able to go to the information night. I was able to talk to them at the career fair. I was able to send a thank you. I was able to follow up on LinkedIn. I was able to go do an interview, send a thank you from the interview, and just constantly being able to have your name out there. The more exposure, the better. So in preparation for interviews, honestly, I feel like you can do a lot of the work before you even walk into the interview. If you've made a really good first impression, if you've done your homework, if you know who the company is, if you've talked to them several times before, that interview is just going to be kind of finalizing who you are. And I feel like the recruiter and the person who's interviewing you, if they've spoken to you already, you should have already covered a lot by the time you get into that interview. Now, that's not saying that if you haven't talked to them before, when you get into the interview, that you don't have a chance, but it's really important to have that good preparation and to talk to them beforehand so you have a leg up on anyone else when you get into that interview.
I would also say, can you hear me?
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
also say connect. Sorry, I was gonna say, when you do research, I think what I've found that my research has been successful is trying to tie it to like, why does this piece of information that I'm telling you matter, right? So, for example, the place that I interned at this summer, I looked into the fact that one of the teams like bought a old pretty much asset manager, and I looked into like, why does that matter, right? And then connecting that to like, why does that make me want to work for you more, right? So I think when you are doing research, trying to tie it always to a narrative of like, this matters because of this, and that matters because of this, and that's why I want to work here, right? So I think sometimes it's like you're encouraged to do research, but I would encourage you to do research that's meaningful, right? That connects to something that you're trying to talk about.
Phenomenal. Yeah, absolutely. Meaningful research.
Um,
Good. Oh, yeah.
Another good tip I would say is ask the person that set up the interview for the interviewers. So LinkedIn is there for a reason. So use it to stalk people. I know Brian did that before he talked to us. So definitely do that. Definitely do that, because that'll leave like a mark on the interviewer that said, "Oh, this guy remembered that I went to, I don't know, find like a common sport, or find where they went, and you always find ways to like slip in little bits of information that'll leave like a lasting remark on your interviewer." So when I was interviewing at American, I said something about where the interviewer had worked previously, and I was like, "Oh, hey, I saw that you worked on this project. That sounds really cool. Could you tell me more? I know it's not about this job, but I saw that you worked in this field. I'm also in the same field. I'd love to know more." And to this day, I mean, he keeps telling me that, "Hey, you remembered all that stuff, and you probably stood out more than anybody that I've ever interviewed." So kind of catching them off guard like that really goes a long way, because when it comes down to sitting down and like reviewing who's good and who's not, they're going to say, "Oh, this guy remembered who I was. And like, he did his research, he really looked into everything, and he came prepared." So I would say in an interview situation like that, definitely research who your interviewers are, and find little places where you can insert that information and say that, "Hey, I see that you've worked at American for 17 years. You moved from supplier management to material planning to all these different places." And they're like, "Dude, I didn't even know I did all those things. I've been here so long." So doing all that kind of research, and then tying it in with a question like, how has your experience in all these different departments led you to where you are, and how do you plan on leading this group of people? So bringing information like that really goes a long way, and I would say definitely recommend students to try that as well.
Good. Yeah. Kind of knowing who you're talking to prior to
Exactly.
the interview could be so helpful. Yeah. Good.
So
Liz?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. This is where I have notes on this one.
I love it.
Number one, know what the job is. So like, I work at an advertising firm. My position is a senior account executive. We call it the account services team. It's not accounting. It is marketing. And you say, you want to work at an advertising firm. Just be like, "Okay, I'm applying for the account services internship." Google that. Google what account services at an advertising agency is, because it's not as super clear. It's not like your accountant. You're like, "Okay, I feel like I know what that is." If it's a job title that doesn't like scream what it is, Google it, because there will be answers. People call things different things, but you'll get an idea of what the job is, and be prepared with specific questions related to that job. And I feel like that is the biggest thing I miss with people when they come in. Even the people we hire really don't know, and all it could do is like a Google search that, like, what does this mean? What does this job really mean? So that's like a huge thing for me, that people just Google it. It's not super hard. The next thing is like, be conversational. Don't be nervous. The best interviews are the people that it's just a fun conversation for like an hour. An intern that we hired and now is full-time, like, best interview I've ever had. She was amazing. And I think she was in our office for an hour and a half. because she was talking to everybody, because it was just so great. It was such a great fit. And if you're having a great conversation, they're going to be like, that person is a great fit for our team. More than just your qualifications, you're going to be somebody who really, really jives with the team. And that's honestly just as important as your qualifications, because if you're not going to jive with our team, we're a super collaborative environment. It's not going to work out. So being super conversational, and I can say from my personal experience, the interviews that I walked away from saying, oh my God, they loved me, are the ones that I got. The ones that I was like, I think it went okay. I did not get those. So if you can walk away from that interview being like, that was just a great fit all around, we loved each other, it was super fun, you're more likely to get that job. And then always relate everything back to your qualifications and your abilities. So if somebody says, well, during this job, you do like X, Y, Z, you can be like, oh, that's awesome, because when I was president of this club, I did things like that all the time, and I'm used to doing that. Like, always relate it back to you, and just instead of just saying, oh, okay, that's really cool. Like, always relate it back to you and what you've done, because it's going to further show us that you're right for that position. So those are all my notes.
One more thing I wanted to add.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's important, especially for like finance and economics and more technical stuff. If you don't know the answer to a question, just say you don't know. Don't try to BS. Don't try to make something up. People appreciate your willingness to just say, hey, I don't know. Like, I had an interview and the guy, he asked me some question and I was like, I can guess what he was. He was like, don't guess. If you don't know, tell me you don't know so I can teach you. So I think that's important. Like, don't try to BS. Don't try to like finagle a question. It's not gonna work. And it makes you look dishonest. So that's the biggest piece of advice I would add.
And I think that demonstrates like a level of humility, right? That you are willing to say that you don't know the answer. And I think most employers like to see humility in their employees. So I think that's a great point. I think students often, it's like they almost think like you can't say I don't know the answer. That's not true. And I mean, I feel like, maybe you don't want to say that to every question, but like once an interview, I feel like is absolutely fine. Any other thoughts?
I have one more point.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think this might not apply to every internship, but if you can speak to someone who was in the internship that you were looking for or in a very similar role, that kind of conversation is invaluable. Because I know when I interviewed with both WorldPay and with 8451, I was able to talk to people who worked in either a similar role or the exact same internship and be able to talk to them about what were the hardest things about your LPE, what did you have to overcome, and what should I expect going into this. Being able to have that conversation with them is so valuable to be able to learn from their experience and then apply that to know what you can expect going forward, and just to help you know whether or not it's going to be a good experience for you and whether it's the next right step in your career.
Yep. Again, just talking to people about whatever you possibly can so that it becomes a little bit more personal throughout the whole process. Phenomenal. Any other thoughts on interviewing? Okay. So let's jump into.
Wait, sorry.
Oh, yes.
Ask for dress code, because some companies, like, we don't show up in a suit to our company. Just business casual is fine. We wear jeans and sweatshirts some days. So like, just, ask. Don't be afraid to ask for the dress code. That's it.
Know your audience, right? Yeah, good.
I will say though, it's better to be overdressed than be underdressed.
Than underdressed. That's right.
So
that's true.
I will say that because day one of work I was wearing a full suit, and day two I switched to jeans. So I think it's okay to understand the culture, but I think for the sake of an interview, even if you're going to be a mechanic, I would still go in a full suit just to show that I'm here for the job and not just, so I don't know, maybe some conflicting advice there, but I think an interview, you should always present yourself at your best, regardless of, unless it's specifically said that, hey, come in jeans and come in business casual, then that's fine. Yeah. But if there's no expectations set, then I'd say go the whole 9 yards and, bring your full A game on.
Sure. Yeah, I think a good default is like full suit, but then if you hear specific things from the company, by all means, definitely feel free to tone it down a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about like now being in a position. You're in an internship, you're in a co-op, or even a full-time role. What advice do you all have for students once they're in a position for really standing out, getting promoted, continuing to network? What advice do you have once students are actually in these positions?
I
So
can
I
start
can
that
speak
off.
on this
Go
if you
ahead,
want to go
Sean.
first, go ahead.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
I
Go
was
ahead,
just
Sam.
gonna say, looking at the questions you have, there was talk about what about if you're in an unstructured internship, and I can speak on that because and how to stand up in the job. Children's, it's not the most structured. Like I don't come in, I don't have a binder that gives me like my day to day. Here's what you're gonna do on day 31 of your internship. It's a lot of, hey, here's a couple tasks, and what I do, and it's a little bit more unstructured, but a way I stand out is I'm always checking in with managers and seniors and people above me. Just, hey, is there any work you need done? Or, hey, I've got some free time here. What can I help you with? And then always just checking in, the constant checking in, and it stands out and it shows that, hey, they won't work. That's good. And it makes you look more responsible and reliable. Like we can go to him or her for tasks. It really helps you stand out, and especially in an unstructured internship, it helps to keep you focused and engaged because you're always getting a new task, or maybe the task turns into something that you're doing weekly, monthly, every 3 days. So I just say the biggest thing to do is always be asking questions and always be looking for more work if you're in a little bit more of a unstructured environment.
Good. And I will say that tends to be fairly common. I mean, some companies do have very structured programs where it's like, every day what you're going to be going in and doing. But then other companies, it's maybe not quite as structured. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but to know what to do in those situations where maybe you don't have a whole lot on your plate, to take the initiative to like go ask and see what else needs to be done. Awesome. I know, Abdu, you were gonna say something about this.
Yeah, yeah, I was. So I have 2 points that I've learned. So one of the best pieces of advice that I got when I was working over the summer. So like my job was pretty unstructured also. So like I was always looking for things to do. And one day, this was just like me trying to be nice. So one of the associates had eaten lunch, and I was going to a trash can, and I was like, "Hey, do you mind if I was like, you want me to take that for you?" And she was like, "No, never mind. Like, don't worry about it." But then when we had our meeting, she was talking about like she was giving me like feedback, and she was like, one thing that I noticed that's not a big deal is like you offered to take my garbage away from me. So she was like, don't volunteer for jobs that you don't want to do. So if you don't want to be the guy who is constantly like, basically be cognizant of what you ask for, because if you ask for that type of work, that's what people are going to think you're there for, right? So I think it's important, like especially when you're unstructured, finding what you actually want to do, right? So if you want to be the guy or the gal who's on every phone call taking notes, volunteer to do that. But if that's not what you want to do, don't volunteer to do it just for the purpose of volunteering, because then you'll get pigeonholed into a position that you're not going to like and you're going to be miserable, right? So then also on top of that, I would say being an intern, one of the most important things that people look for, at least from what I've heard, places I've worked for, is like how dedicated are you to your role, right? Like I'm not saying come like the cliche of being the first one in the office. That's not always practical, but don't also be the last person in and the first person out. That doesn't look good, right? So it's about, I think, at a certain level, especially when you're like the lowest level person, showing that you have determination, showing that you have a good attitude. Because frankly, when you're coming in as a first year intern, you don't have a lot of skills. So it's like what people are looking for is someone that they can teach and someone that's willing to be there. So that's a piece of advice I would say when you're in your position.
I would say I actually have kind of contradictory advice to that, Abdu. Sorry. My suggestion is, I mean, take every opportunity that you are given, even the crappy ones. Because for me personally, when I was an intern at the company I work at now, there are these stupid things called price cards. We work with a mattress company, and it basically is a grid of prices that sit at the end of every bed that say, if you want this size with this base, it's going to be this price. And they are the bane of everyone's existence, but they're super important. because it's how much you're actually going to pay for the mattress. So it's not super fun. But when I was an intern, our boss needed somebody to help proof them. And I was like, yeah, sure, I've got nothing to do. Why not? And so I was looking through them. I found several mistakes, and slowly my boss started to like rely on me more to help with those. And eventually, as an intern, I basically owned them and did everything for them. And now that I've turned into a full-time employee, we've worked on and developed a web app that does them just by a click of a button. And it's $100,000 and growing project that I am still working on, that I get the opportunity to run and do. And I mean, I just literally had a meeting this morning about it. So I mean, I just took an opportunity that everyone just, didn't want to do, and I made it my own, and I crushed it, and it showed to my bosses that I cared, and I, even though it was a crappy job, I was going to get it done. I was going to get it done right, and they needed to rely on that for that project. So just doing something, just grab every opportunity and run with it is my advice. And kind of to go off of that, like whatever you do, just do it well. It's okay to mess up and it's okay to ask questions, but don't just kind of like and just like throw it off, put a lot of effort into it, because that's going to show, and they're going to want to give you more work and trust you with more things. So that's really important. And then I feel like I had another thing, but somebody else can go. But
good, yeah. And I think maybe to kind of mesh what you guys both said together, like you never want to act like something is beneath you as an intern, right? Because then that comes off as a little bit arrogant. But then at the same time, jumping at some of these opportunities is really important to do as well. For sure, for sure. Any other thoughts on standing out? Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I would say two things. One would be to be a sponge. So, absorb all the information that you're getting. This whole internship process is for you to figure out if industrial management is the right thing for you. The whole reason people do internships is to see if this is what they want to do for the rest of their lives. So, absorb all the information that you're getting, talk to people, network with the people that are currently there, and kind of see where you stand, right? One thing that I love doing when I get into a new job is just look at the org structure. So go on to Outlook and just look at the org structure and see where you are, see where your team is, and ask questions. Say, hey, why are we here when these guys are here, but we're kind of doing the same thing? Like, what's going on? So ask a lot of questions, absorb a lot of information. When it comes to unstructured programs, I think you're in a very unique situation where you get to make your own internship. So that could go one of two ways. One, you could have a really successful internship, leave a really high impact mark on yourself, on the company. Or two, you could just do with the bare minimum requirement and skeet by and, just make nothing of it. Your entire goal in an internship should be at the end of the how many weeks it is to get an offer letter to come back next time or to come back for a full-time offer. So you need to make yourself as attractive as possible during the internship process. You've got in through the first round. You've got the interviewer. You got the interviewer. Now you got to get the rest of the team to believe you that, hey, this is the right person for the job and we need them for our team. So I would say make the most of your internship, especially if it's unstructured. Pick up projects that you think are right. If you see a flaw or if you see an inefficiency, pick it up and say that, hey, I looked at this and it looks like there's something we can do better. We're not communicating well. Why not we use Teams? So I had to really push for Teams, and I'm serious. I had to really push for Teams during all of last year, and we just started rolling into it. And that's only because of necessities. But our team is much more equipped to use Teams now because I've been pushing it on those people for the last 3 to 4 months. And that now, since everybody's remote, everybody's getting on these video chats, everybody's collaborating, and everybody's loving it. So you have to be the one that enables change, and you have to get in there and you have to say that, hey, this is what we need to do. And once you get people convinced, it's easy for them to follow. So I would say if you're in an unstructured internship, definitely make most of it. Seek out projects, go after things that you don't think are right, and ask a lot of questions. I think that'll help you a lot.
Love it. Any other thoughts on standing out in either a structured or an unstructured internship, or other advice that you have once you're actually on the job?
I can kind of go off of what Sirius said about asking for work and being able to go after what you're interested in. Because really, like he said, a goal is to get a full-time offer, but another goal is just learn as much as possible while you're there and figure out what you like. Like he said, he was doing those internships to figure out if industrial management was right for him. And even within every major, there are different specific specializations that you can have. So in my first internship, when I was doing information security, I kind of realized that maybe it wasn't the best fit for me, but I liked some of the stuff that I was doing. And I was working with a lot of project managers, and I was really interested in what they were doing. So don't be afraid to ask if you're really interested in something. So I asked if I could shadow some of those project managers. I asked them, and I asked my manager, and we were able to set that up. And that was really invaluable experience for me to be able to spend time shadowing them, learning what they do, and learning more about what they do for the company and what their day-to-day looks like. And that kind of helped propel my interest for what I wanted to do with my next internship, and then also helped me land that next internship in project management based on the fact that I showed interest in a previous role. And that kind of went a long way in the next interview process. So you never know what you can get until you ask. So definitely don't be afraid to ask and go out there. And I also got to work a lot with our company's community engagement with a nonprofit. And I wouldn't have been able to be really involved with that if I hadn't asked. And going back to what Liz said, no matter what it is, even if it's community engagement, if it's shadowing, do the best that you can with it. Because right away they're looking for quality of work over quantity of work. So whatever you're doing, do a great job with it. And then once you show that you're reliable and that you will do a good job, then they know that they can trust you with more.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would also emphasize one more thing that I thought of. I think it's important to try to build relationships with the people you work with. And I think even outside of the direct people you work with, like when I was interning this summer, I would come in early and I would make an effort to at least try to get coffee with someone, either on our team or a different team. And I was like, I think I probably, by the time my internship was over, I had I want to say 30 different coffee things that I did, or lunch, because I think it's important to and not just for the purpose of oh, I'm just grabbing coffee and let's just sit there and stare at each other, but just try to understand who this person is, why they are doing what they're doing, and who they are, and most importantly, the things you can learn from them. Hopefully, all being positive, but sometimes some of the negative things you learn from them, and you're like, oh, I didn't know that that's not a good thing to do. I didn't notice that you might even pick up on some of the things they say, huh, that's not the way to think about something. Or, huh, that's interesting that you think that. So you're able to kind of correct and understand the company's culture, and maybe people to gravitate to or people to gravitate from, or away from, which is beneficial either way. So
to add on that,
Brian,
oh, sorry.
You can go ahead.
I would say don't always make it about work too. I mean, it's good to learn about jobs and what people do and how they got there and that stuff, but just make friends, those relationships are probably going to last even longer. If you just chat about whatever, or, ask them if they have a dog, because people love talking about their dogs, just building those relationships beyond work is super important too, because if you go back to that person and need a reference or something, that they're gonna help you out. And also, I remembered what I was going to say, and you guys all touched on it, but just ask for work. Don't just bug people. I don't have anything to do. What can I do? Or ideas, or, don't, because if you're going to sit there and then at the end of your internship, they say, okay, what do you feel like you accomplished? And you're like, well, nobody gave me any work. Then it's well, you weren't useful then. So always ask for work and, say I finished this, give me something else. I finished this, give me something else. And just keep asking them, because they know then that you want to get stuff done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Brian, a quick point on this, and this is exactly what he mentioned, and I don't think it's one of your questions, so I'll touch on it and let the others speak to it a little bit. Mentorship is a huge thing when it comes to internships, and that's not one of the questions that are listed, so you guys can say your 2 cents right after. But to what you said before, I mean, having those little coffee meetings or lunch meetings goes an incredible long way. Like, you make relationships with people that you never thought you would make them with, and most of the time it's free because they'll pick up the tab. So for the least thing, offer to at least pay, and then get that going, so that one, you get exposure to the company, you get to see where other people are, and two, you get to build a mentor, hopefully for life. Because I did that at 7, and I happened to find out that he plays the same video game that I play, and we almost play like 4 or 5 times a week now. And now he works at McDonald's, and he reached out to me not too long ago, and he was like, "Hey, dude, the airline industry is doing really poorly. If you need a recommendation, or if you need somebody to, one of my friends is looking for somebody like you. So if you want to walk into McDonald's, it pretty much be a foot in the door." So definitely, again, going back to networking and keeping your mentors close. It's important to have your own personal board of directors almost, so that you can kind of bounce ideas off them and say that, hey, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Is it a good idea to go into the airline industry right now? When we're looking for bailouts, and what do you think I should do? Should I? So just keep talking to them. Build your own board of directors. A core people that'll tell you what to do, what's right, what's not right, and find mentors. I think finding mentors is it's hard to do, but once you kind of recognize something that you see in somebody and you're like, man, I wish I was that guy in 5-10 years, reach out to them and say that, what do I do to be in your position in 5 years? I love what you're doing. I love your energy. How can I be there? So I think that is really important as well. You're on mute again.
I was to say, I'm glad you touched on that, because you're right. Having those mentor-mentee relationships is huge. To have somebody that's your go-to person you can ask questions to and kind of get advice for, your own professional development, and just building relationships. Again, like you said, Abdu, is so important to just really get to know people at the organization. So we are coming up. We are over an hour now. So I'm going to go ahead and close us out. Are there any last thoughts or things that all of you wisdom that you wanted to impart to our students? Any last pieces of advice that you have?
I know, Brian, that you sent us some questions, and there were some major specific questions.
Yes.
I had some kind of thoughts that, I was marketing, but not just related to marketing, just kind of thinking, your question was how do you decide on an area in marketing? It's so broad. So for me, I knew what kind of place I wanted to work. I wanted a creative, fun environment. I didn't want a cubicle farm. That wasn't going to work for me. So I just started Googling places, honestly, and I kind of was like, oh, ad agency, that sounds interesting. And then I just started applying to every ad agency I could find. And just, I knew what kind of place I wanted to work. I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I've kind of ended up in something that I'm good at, so I'll stay here for a while. But if you really have no idea, find the environment that you want to be in and apply to places there, because that's going to be super helpful. Good. So that's how I just kind of, I found my path that way.
Good. Yeah. I was going to say, let's maybe just really quickly touch on some of these last questions that I had listed. So any skill, so based off of whatever major you were at UC, now knowing what you know in the positions that you've had, what would you say are the most crucial skills that you think students should have based off of your industry and major? So maybe we'll start with analytics. Do we have any analytics people?
Yeah, yes. I am in analytics. I would say that there's actually a lot of free classes that you can take online. So Udemy is great. Khan Academy is good. There's so many free things that you can do online, especially now in this pandemic. Everybody's just offering free classes left, right, and center. So definitely hop on that and take advantage of that. And even at UC, if you have a free elective, go take a computer science class. Just see how programmers do it. See how it works in Python. So I would definitely say take advantage of those free classes, and you never know where that might take you. It might be very useful down the line. Maybe now you're not thinking, but you're like, oh shoot, I learned this 6 years ago. Let me go back and look at my notes. So definitely do that.
Good. Other skills. Yeah, go ahead.
from an econ, because I think econ analytics were together. So what I would say is like one thing that I've found is like at just a baseline, because at least for me, like in finance, it's very skills heavy, but when you're starting out, you frankly don't have those skills yet because you don't have the experience, right? But I would say one thing that I learned through economics is like being able to understand the bigger picture, right? And then also being able to understand the smaller picture and the little picture and how they all connect, right? So I think that's an important skill to have, is trying to understand how the world works and what part you play in the world. You know, like for example, if you're in the airline industry, what part do you play in the world? Why are you important, right? Like if you're going into finance, why does this job matter? What does it fit into? And always speaking to those higher level things, but being able to understand the fundamentals of them. So that's one thing, one benefit of economics that I've started to feel in my positions.
Great, great. Brennan, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so definitely piggybacking off of that, it's important to know the fundamentals for analytics to really know the differences between data, the things that are talked about in the Banner 1 and Banner 2 courses, the qualitative versus the quantitative. Having that foundation is super important. And then on top of that, this goes for both information systems and business analytics. Being coachable and being teachable are super important because you might not have all the technical skills, but you might not need them. Being able to at least speak the language or learn the language while you're there is really important. So be able to ask questions. Hey, I don't know what this acronym was. Can you explain that to me? Hey, someone mentioned this system. I don't know what that system does. Can you break that down for me? Be able to ask those questions and be teachable and coachable will go a really long way to making sure that you can learn a lot and also contribute a lot to your team.
Good, really good. And then Sean, anything to add on this?
I think everybody's pretty much hit on all the points. As
Okay.
far as for accounting, like Excel would be the biggest thing, but just knowing those simple functions, you'd be surprised getting out into the field. Many companies don't use those simple functions from what I've seen. So just that basic understanding as far as a technical skill.
Got it. And then I'll go ahead and ask you this last question, Sean, since I know we've got a ton of accounting students. So there can be a lot of pressure to go public, meaning you work for a public accounting firm, namely a Big Four corporation. How did you evaluate whether you wanted to take opportunities within industry or corporate accounting or public accounting?
So yeah, so I personally, I do want to go Big Four public accounting, and I made that decision based off of I like the kind of work that the Big Four accounting firms do. I like the opportunities that come with working at a public accounting firm, and I like the fact that you are going to be very busy if you work at a public accounting firm. Now, as far as choosing between industry and corporate as opposed to public, I'm lucky. I've received an offer from KPMG, so I'm going to be able to test out the public world, and I've already got to see the corporate and industry side. If you can, work your way to get both an industry internship and maybe a public internship just to see what they're like and see which one's better for you. Great. If not, industry jobs tend to be a little bit easier to get. It's a little bit more routine. There's a little bit less training involved because you're not going out and doing an audit and you're not doing everybody's taxes. It's a little bit easier to get an industry job at first from what I've seen in my experience personally. So I'd say if you can't get the public opportunity in your time at UC, talk to the recruiters, go to the accounting club, talk to people, talk to professors. I know a lot of the accounting professors spend some time out in the public world. People will give you such a good insight as to what the public world is like, so that it is something you want to go for. You've talked to people and they know what it was like, and they can give you tips like, hey, you're going to be working 80-hour weeks during busy season. Like, you have to prepare for that. But if you can't, I completely understand if you can't, or maybe it's a very competitive scene to get job offers from, especially the Big Four. So also look at the regional firms. That's another great one. They're a little bit smaller, a little bit less intense from what I've heard and the talking that I've done with like BKD, Cassidy Schiller. just constantly talk to people. That would be the biggest thing, because accounting, public versus industry, can be very different, very, very different.
Yeah, yeah. Good, which kind of brings us full circle. Just talk to people, network, get out there, build relationships, right? Probably one of the most important things you can do across the board. Good. Well, I think that's all I've got for you. Thank you all so much for your willingness to kind of lend your insights and giving your firsthand advice to our students about what you found to be helpful to be successful in this job search world. And I will say, I hope this is okay with you, but students that are watching, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn to all of our panelists. I'm sure they would be more than happy to connect with you. What was that, Liz?
Absolutely.
Good. Yeah. So
yeah,
again,
if you made it this far in the video,
I was gonna say the chances of anybody actually making it to the end of this video are close to none. But if they by chance did make it through, go ahead and reach out to all of you on LinkedIn. Anyway, all that to say, thank you so much. This is all so helpful. You all have had, such good advice to share, and I thank you so much for your time. So,
thank you.
Stay safe.
You.
I hope you all continue to manage this chaos. If there's anything that we at Lindner can do to help you in the future, by all means, please feel free to reach out to us.
It might be time to look into a master's program. I don't know.
Hey, there you go.
Hey, that would be good.
All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you again so much.
All right, thanks
so much, Brian. See ya.
See ya.